Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of United Talks podcast. We all know it has been a disastrous season for Manchester United. Now, we're going to do a comprehensive review of the Manchester United 2024-2025 season, navigating a period of profound transformation. And we all know that this season was kind of like a very, I don't know what word to use, but, annoying season for most fans. Basically, the 2024-2025 season proved to be one of the most challenging seasons in Manchester United's illustrious history, marked by unprecedented on-field struggles and significant off-field restructuring under the new Ineos ownership. Now, basically, the club finished in dismal 15th position in the Premier League, their worst ever performance in the Premier League era, and have failed to qualify for any European competition for the upcoming 25-26 season. Now, the period saw turbulent managerial merry-go-round, exposing deep-seated tactical and squad imbalances. Concurrently, Sir Jim Ratcliffe's Ineos group initiated a sweeping transformation, taking control of football operations, appointing new executive leadership, and implementing rigorous cost-cutting measures, while individual brilliance and academic talent offered glimpses of hope. The season underscored the immense task ahead. Now, we're basically going to try to break down all of this into details to try to give you a context as to why we had to go through this research to do a season review of the Manchester United squad as a whole. I mean, of the Manchester United club, Manchester United as a club and as a whole, basically. And this season was full of a lot of things that the fans didn't really agree with, right? But now the future actually holds a demanding rebuild, which is also constrained by financial realities and requiring exceptional patience as the club endeavors to reestablish its competitive standing and achieve its ambitious long-term objectives. Now, we're just going to do an overview of the season and the key outcomes and give you some breakdowns and talk about certain things, especially with Premier League performances, and that's what we're going to start with. Now, Manchester United concluded the concluded 2024-2025 Premier League season in a historically poor fashion, as we all know, finishing in a dismal 15th position with just 42 points. This represents the club's worst ever finish in the Premier League era and the first time that they have ended a season in the bottom half of the table since 1989-1990 campaign. Now, this outcome is not merely a dip in form, but indicates pervasive club-wide issue, culture issue, impacting consistency and also competitiveness. Now, the magnitude of the decline suggests that the problems are deeply embedded across various facts and facets of the club, including squad quality, tactical coherence, potentially club culture, rather than just being attributed to an isolated poor results or, basically singular managerial mishaps. As we all know, because we as fans tend to always, blame the manager or blame one player, but these are deep-rooted issues. And Rúben Amorim has said it time and again that the things he thought from outside is different from what you see from inside, but there are changes that are constantly going on. And we're going to talk about some of these things. Now, the dark reality of United's decline is further exemplified, basically, when contrasted with the issues. It has been amplified when contrasted with the issues of the bitter rivals Liverpool, who clinched the Premier League title in this same season. I mean, comparison highlights a significant and alarming divergence in competitive trajectories, illustrating that Manchester United is moving further away from rather than closer to title contention, which is what happened, from what we saw last season. The challenges of bridging this widening competitive gap will undoubtedly impact the club's ability to attract top-tier talent, retain their key players, and maintain a global brand appeal in the coming transfer windows. And that's why Manchester is moving really quickly, to move for players that we need and things like that. But, we're going to now start talking about it, giving an overview of how we progressed, especially through the season, and how we got to where we are right now. With regards to domestic cup campaigns, obviously we in the previous seasons we had good success with domestic cups. We had the FA Cup the previous season, the season before we had the Carabao Cup. So it felt like, okay, they were masking, obviously, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, one time Man United manager, talked about, cups would paper through the track. Winning cups does not mean that the issues are not there. The culture is not there. There's a culture shift, with this current season ever since Sir Alex Ferguson, left or retired. Now, Manchester United's defense of the FA Cup, which we won in 2024, ended prematurely in the 5th round following a penalty shootout loss at home to Fulham. Then the EFL Cup campaign also concluded in the quarterfinals with a 4-3 defeat to Tottenham. Now, these eliminations from both domestic cup campaigns, particularly as defending champions of the FA Cup, suggest that either insufficient squad depth to compete effectively on multiple fronts, or just a strategic prioritization issue. Given the concurrent struggles in the Premier League, it was plausible that the UEFA Europa League became the primary focus of securing European qualification, implicitly leading to reduced effort or rotation in domestic cups. Now, this challenging balancing act of the squad resources ultimately failed to yield success in any competition, further highlighting the team's overall fragility. Now, if we're going to break down the UEFA Europa League campaign, we all know how that ended, but just kind of give you like an overview and break it down, step by step, and then we can talk about how we progressed and got to the final. Our UEFA Europa League represented Manchester United's only realistic pathway to European competition qualification for the 25-26 season. Now, this club, the club navigated its way to the final in Bilbao but ultimately suffered a 1-0 defeat to Tottenham Hotspurs, and this loss was pivotal. It also ensured that United failed to qualify for any form of European football for the first time since 2013-2014. When David Moyes was manager of Manchester United and finished 8th. Now, the repeated defeats to Tottenham throughout the season underscore a significant competitive and psychological disadvantage against direct rivals. Now, Tottenham not only defeated United in the Europa League final, but also secured 2 Premier League victories, 3-0 at Old Trafford and 1-0 at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. And then the EFL Cup win 4-3. Marking the first time United lost 3 times against Tottenham in a single season. That's very disrespectful, but it is what it is. This unprecedented pattern of defeats to the same opponent across different competitions indicates a profound tactical mismatch or a significant psychological block within the Manchester United squad when facing this specific opponent. Now, the recurring vulnerability suggests that there's a failure to address the tactical shortcomings or devise effective counter strategies. Despite the overall struggles, the Europa League campaign featured a notable moment of resilience. United's 7-6 aggregate victory at extra time against Olympique Lyon, which everybody was very much excited about. In the quarterfinals, which also described it in the media, which was described in the media as one of the greatest comebacks in European football history. While this dramatic comeback provides a positive highlight, it isolated the nature within a season of widespread underperformance, and it suggests that it was an exception rather than the norm. That's what it suggested, right? Now, if this team frequently relied basically on such extraordinary efforts to salvage results, it indicates a lack of consistent tactical control and the inability to dominate games through a coherent system. Now, this reinforces the narrative of a team struggling with consistency and often needing individual heroics to compensate for the collective deficiencies. Now, speaking further on the Europa League, the Europa League final loss was not a merely missed opportunity, but it also triggered, a critical cascading failure by denying the club any European football in 25-26 season. Now, the outcome was severe severely the financial implication has severely affected the club, and it includes significant losses in TV rights, sponsorships, and matchday income, and will considerably hinder the club's ability to attract top-tier talent in the upcoming transfer window, despite the fact that Rúben Amorim has said time and again that we have the ability to attract top talents. And obviously, in the most recent one is basically going to complete Matheus Cunha deal, as well as being interested in Bryan Mbeumo. But the single result amplifies the club's existing financial woes and makes the necessary rebuild even more challenging, creating a negative feedback loop. Now, if we're going to talk about the Manchester United's European campaign and knockout stage results, first of all, in the round of 16, we played Real Sociedad, and the aggregate score was 5-2. We beat them we drew 1-1 away at home, and then the second leg we just definitely needed, away. And then the second leg we just needed to win desperately, and we beat them 4-1 despite conceding a penalty, which they scored first. And then obviously we rallied round and qualified. And then also when we got to the quarterfinal, we played Lyon, as I just said earlier. We played 2-2 away, so 2 away draws, right? And then we beat them 5-4 on aggregate after extra time at home. And then if we're going to the semi-final game at Athletic Bilbao, we'll be talking about basically just playing 7-1. We beat them 7-1 in the semi-finals. Basically, speaking of like in overall aggregate score, 7-1, 3-0 away, and 4-1 at home. So we beat them 3-0 away, and then the tie was all but done, and then 4-1 at home after conceding first. And then basically they thought they were going to do a remontada on us, and then we got to the final, and in the final we lost to Tottenham 1-0, right? From the only chance which they created, which eventually was a deflected chance, right? Now, if you look at all this, in all of this, there were so many goals scored, but there were also so many goals conceded. And in all through this round, there was a recurring theme. There was only in one game away at Athletic Bilbao where we kept a clean sheet. The rest, we conceded goals. So it talked about, it focused more on defensive frailties and all of that. Now, if we're going to talk about the 2025 UEFA Europa League Final statistics versus Tottenham, then that will now bring us to, goals scored. Obviously, that's what counts, right? Tottenham scored 1 goal. Total shots, Tottenham had 3, United had 15. Total shots on target, Tottenham had 1, United had 4. Total saves, Tottenham had 4, United had nothing, because obviously they had no shot. Then ball possession, Man United ended the game with over 65% ball possession, with basically, that's pretty much tells a lot about the game. And if you want to see more details on the game, you can check online or probably just look at what the match review we did for the day. But if we're going to talk about, that the loss to Tottenham in the final just kind of, encapsulates all of our season and just kind of tells us, where we're at and how far off we are from the top teams like Liverpool, and it's so sad to say, but top teams like Liverpool, Man City, Tottenham, and then Arsenal, if I must say. But on the other hand, there are some certain other teams that are also in the rebuild, but they're spending rigorously to get to where they want to. But if we're going to talk about the overall positives and negatives of the season, the 2024-2025 season of Manchester United was characterized by extreme inconsistencies, right? Oscillating between, the flashes of individual brilliance and historically poor collective performances. Now, this points to a fundamental lack of collective cohesion, tactical instability or tactical stability, or whatever you might call it if you're looking at it like that, and then a mental fortitude within the squad. Now, if we're going to talk about the positives, maybe we can put a positive spin on it, and then I'll give you more details when we do the 5 things we learned from the season. Now, reaching the UEFA Europa League Final provided a brief period of hope and a tangible chance of silverware, albeit ultimately unfulfilled. Now, if we're looking at this, there are moments of, individual brilliance, such as Alejandro Garnacho's spectacular long-range goal, Amad Diallo's hat-trick against Southampton. There The club also maintained the tradition of promoting youth, which is another positive we can take from, because there are so many youth players. Several academy players making their senior debuts, including Harry Amas. We had Toby Collier. We had Chido Obi. Who else? We had Tyler Fredrickson as well. And then even at one point in that Tottenham game where we lost 1-0, we had like a bench full of kids, and we had a barrage of injuries in 1 week. I think we had a long period where we didn't have any game to play. I think about 12 days, and within that 12 days we had injuries, a barrage. We had 12 injuries. And then we also had the final day 2-0 victory against Villa that lifted the team to 15th, preventing an even lower league finish, because I was already getting banter from people saying stuff like, oh, if not for the relegated 3 teams in Ipswich, Southampton, and what's that team? Ipswich, Southampton, what's that team? Can't remember. Now, if not for the relegated 3 teams, I believe Man United will probably Leicester, yeah, Ipswich, Southampton, and Leicester. If not for the relegated, if the relegated 3 teams were not there, obviously Manchester United would be relegated. So speaking of negatives, now the historically worst Premier League finish of 15th place and a record low of 42 points in the Premier League era is one of the negatives. Now, failure to qualify for any European competition is another negative, and then early exit from the FA Cup 5th round and EFL Cup quarterfinals was also a negative. A high number of Premier League losses, 18, and goals conceded, 54. Significant managerial instability throughout the season, with 3 different individuals taking charge. And then a concerning number of errors directly leading to goals, 12 in the Premier League, indicating defensive fragility. So these are the things that we're going to talk about. So now, the erosion of Old Trafford's traditional status as a fortress was particularly evident, with the team suffering 2 consecutive 3-0 home defeats in Premier League. Now, the loss of the psychological advantage and the intimidation factor associated with playing at home can also negatively impact the fan engagement, match day atmosphere, and the team's confidence, further contributing to the negative cycle of performance. And that is it. So if we're going to go deep, we're going to be saying basically that the issue with Man United is deeper than we think. It's much deeper. It's beyond the managers, beyond the players. It's now a cultural and a negative cycle, and we are now at the darkest of lows. Like, if we're going to talk about, we can't go lower than this. It has to be upward now from here on out. And then also, if we're going to focus on other things, so we've touched on, our campaign, like the season overview. We've touched on, a couple of other things. We've touched on the off-field. Now we've touched on even like the on-field performances. Now we're coming to the off-field transformations, basically. We're going to talk about things that are happening off-field. Like ownership, board, executive changes, and all of that. First and foremost, we're going to start with Sir Jim Ratcliffe's Ineos investment and control shift. Now, in 2024-2025 season, basically, it marked a new era for Manchester United, being the first full season since 04-05 in which the Glazer family, no longer held control of the club, even though they're in the background, but the club's footballing operations and all of that were taken over by Ineos. The fundamental shift was also inherited by Sir Jim Ratcliffe and the Ineos group, right, which acquired 27.7% in February 2024. Now, subsequently increasing its ownership to 28.9%, as reported. Some outlets carried 25%, others carried, others carried 27.7%, but it depends. And now, the transfer of control signifies a clear move towards a more professional, performance-driven approach to the sporting side of the club, contrasting sharply with the previous ownership model, which was often criticized for its detachment from footballing decisions. Now, this change is crucial and critical for implementing a coherent long-term football strategy. And Sir Jim Ratcliffe had publicly articulated an ambitious long-term goal, he said that several times, for the club, winning the Premier League by 2028, which is what everybody's looking out for. Now, this is an initiative he refers to as the Mission 21, right? To get 21 Premier League titles by 2028. Now, while such a target is inspiring, especially for a club that just finished 15th, it simultaneously creates immense pressure on the new footballing structure. Right now, this could also potentially lead to tension between the acknowledged need for long-term patience, rebuilding, and the immediate demand for results, possibly influencing short-term decisions if linear progress is not immediately apparent. Now, there were some changes at board level as well. Despite the significant shift in footballing control, the Glazer family members, Avram, Joel, and Kevin, Brian, and Darcy, and Edward, as many names as you can remember, Avram, Joel, Kevin, Brian, Darcy, and Edward, remain executive co-chairmen and directors on the board. Alongside them, new board members such as Jean-Claude Blanc, appointed in July 2024, Sir Jim Ratcliffe himself, appointed in December 2023, also joined, right? Now, this continued presence of the multiple Glazer family members on the board alongside Ineos representatives suggests a potential dual power structure. Even with Ineos controlling football operations, this arrangement could lead to an internal fraction or slower decision making on the critical non-footballing matters such as an overall financial strategy, commercial deals, or even infrastructural development, potentially hindering the agility required for a comprehensive rebuild. And this is something that most people don't really, pay attention to in some of the things. Some people think that basically, it's easy peasy, straightforward, sell the club, blah, 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 blah. But the truth is there are certain things that, we need to pay attention to. First and foremost, if we're going to talk about like executive appointments and departures, a decisive move towards professionalizing the club's executive and football leadership was evident through the appointment of Omar Berrada. Now, Omar Berrada, the new chief executive officer in July 2024, was tasked with, overseeing all aspects of the club's operations and strategy. His extensive background from the City Football Group and FC Barcelona signals an intent to import expertise from, highly successful organizations, further strengthening the football structure. And then Jason Wilcox was also appointed as technical director in April 2024. And then Christopher Vevelle joined the club as director of professional football and scout in July 2024. However, the same period of strategic recruitment has also been accompanied by significant internal upheaval. 3 senior executives, Annie Hale, People and Transformation Director, James Holroyd, Chief Commercial Development Officer, and Florence Lafay, London-based Commercial Director, departed Old Trafford at the end of the season as part of a broader restructuring that goes on in the club, right? Now, reports also indicated that there's an ongoing redundancy and concerns among the remaining staff, while the recruitment of top-tier executives demonstrates a clear intent on modernizing the club's operational structure. The simultaneous departure of multiple senior figures and ongoing job cuts suggests a period of significant internal instability. Now, this could also temporarily hinder operational efficiencies and lead to loss of institutional knowledge, and potentially impact the staff morale, which might also indirectly affect on-field performances and overall club stability. Now, a critical and overdue overhaul of the club's data infrastructure is also on the way, as Sir Jim Ratcliffe also previously asserted that the club was still in the last century of data analysis. So there's a whole lot going on, and that it doesn't really exist here. And that is what Omar Berrada, that's what Sir Jim Ratcliffe has said. It doesn't really exist here. Omar Berrada's background, which includes managing data analytics department for the City Football Group, strongly indicates a strategic pivot towards data-driven decision making, and this is a crucial fundamental change, right? A crucial fundamental and foundational change for long-term success in modern football, impacting everything from player recruitment and scouting to tactical analysis and performance monitoring. The previous lack of subscriptions to key data providers highlights the significant gap that needs to be closed. And from this table, we can actually see that Omar Berrada was appointed July 13, 2024, and his previous role was as City Chief Football Operating Officer at City Football Group. And then Jason Wilcox, Technical Director, April 2024. Then Christopher Vevell, July 2024, Director of Professional Football. Jean-Claude Blanc, Board Member. He was holding the fort while Chief Executive Omar Berrada came in. And then obviously Sir Jim Ratcliffe, as we all know. Many people might not really go deep into this and all that, but there's also a long-term vision and a financial strategy to Ineos's taking over, and Ineos is actively addressing deep-seated financial issues that they inherited from previous ownership. But Sir Jim Ratcliffe aims to return the club to profitability after consecutive years of losses since 2019. He starkly revealed that the club would have run out of cash by the end of 2025 without his 300 million capital injection. Now, this dire financial situation directly dictates that the implementation of an aggressive cost-cutting measure, including staff layoffs, which has been executed to prioritize investment in the squad. This also implies that the financial prudence is not merely a parallel objective, but also primarily driven and a primary driver for influencing footballing decisions, potentially limiting immediate sporting competitiveness. Now, if we're also going to go to on-field managerial dynamics and shifts and tactical evolution and the player performances as well, then we're going to be talking about how we got to this point, but we don't want to go deep into like history as to start talking about how we got here and all of that. But we'll touch on a few of the managerial changes that happened, especially in this season as a whole, seeing as we're reviewing 2024-2025 season. We had 3 managers in one season, right? And that is drastic changes, but 2024-2025 season was characterized by significant managerial instability, reflecting the club's desperate search for a turnaround and the new ownership's decisive, albeit disruptive, action. Now, Erik ten Hag was sacked in October of 2024, October 28th of 2024 rather. Now, the Manchester United team was languishing in 14th place in the Premier League table. Then Ruud van Nistelrooy took over as interim manager. Subsequently, Rúben Amorim was then appointed as the new permanent manager on October 11th, 2024. Erik ten Hag later took over as has now been announced to have taken over as Bayern Leverkusen head coach. Right? Just yesterday gave his first press conference. Now, this rapid succession of managers within a single season suggests that the club's problems extend beyond just the capabilities of any single coach. This indicates that the fundamental issues such as squad composition, tactical fit, injury resilience might also be more deeply rooted and not easily resolved by just managerial changes alone. Perpetuating the cycle of short-term fixes. Harry Maguire, a senior player, noted that the transition from Ten Hag to Amorim will be tough due to their, completely different styles of play. Now, this direct comment highlights a critical tactical mismatch, implying that the existing squad was not adequately equipped or versatile enough to quickly adapt to Amorim's new philosophy, which contributed to, the continued struggles of the club post-change, right? And I just brought you a table of, basically the 3 managers we've had. When Erik ten Hag took charge of the club, when Erik ten Hag was in charge of the club for the 24-25 season, we were 14th. Ruud van Nistelrooy took over. When he took over, we were 14th. When he left, we were 13th. And then Amorim took over, and we never left that position. Whether we won or we drew, we were 13th for a long time, and then we dropped to 15th. After getting only 9 points between January and the last game at Villa. So, now, with regards to Rúben Amorim's tactical approach, we are going to also analyze much later how deep this is rooted, right? We're going to talk about if Rúben Amorim's style of play works or not. But Now, I'm going to just leave that part of the Rúben Amorim style of play, and we're going straight to analysis of style of play under Amorim versus Ten Hag. Now, the appointment of Rúben Amorim was also intended to establish a clear and proactive playing identity, a departure from, the perceived lack of defined style of play under Erik Ten Hag, perceived, because the media also killed Ten Hag's tenure in this. The media also buried Erik Ten Hag's tenure and buried Erik Ten Hag as a manager of Manchester United. Ten Hag was criticized by fans and pundits alike for not possessing a certain style of play. Because I remember a certain Chelsea fan screaming online, content creator, saying, "What's the style of play? What's the style of play?" Under Ten Hag, United sometimes resorted to defending a low block with many bodies and playing long balls. In contrast, Amorim's system is characterized by a 3-4-3 formation, high press, rapid transitions with third man concept. Early signs under Amorim did show improved possession and a reduction in opposition chances from open play, but didn't stop us from conceding over 50 goals in Premier League. However, despite Amorim bringing a clear and defined tactical philosophy, the squad's unsuitability for this system and the tough transitions suggest that Manchester United's long-standing identity crisis, the struggle to establish a consistent playing style, and obviously the ideas around that has been happening since Sir Alex Ferguson left the club. The club merely shifted from one unfulfilled tactical vision to another, indicating a deeper issue with squad construction and continuity that goes beyond just the manager's philosophy, right? Now, this highlights that the problem isn't solely about the manager, because this is very key for all Manchester United fans to take note of, that the problem isn't solely about the manager's tactical blueprint, but also about the continuity and the quality of the squad and the recruitment strategy to consistently support any defined playing style. Straightforward. It's not about the manager, right? We have a squad that consists of players from Sir Alex Ferguson's era, i.e. Johnny Evans, players from that have played under Van Gaal, i.e. Luke Shaw, players that have played under Mourinho, i.e. Lindelof, and players that have played under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, i.e. Maguire, right? Maguire, even Ahmad to some extent, even though Ahmad barely played. But look at that. Ahmad was signed under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's era, barely played. I think, remember, his first goal was against AC Milan in the Europa League in 2020. Think about it. Now, this squad is not built. This squad was signed for different eras, and then we have players that were signed under Ten Hag, barring the ones that were signed, the 5 players that were signed this season, the beginning of the season, the summer of 2024. Those ones were signed for a Ten Hag formation that was supposed to be 4-3-3, right? And immediately we started losing our first game in the season of 2024-2025 season. Oh no, 23-24 season rather. Erik Ten Hag shifted from 4-3-3 and went back to 4-2-3-1, which was being played by Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. And the players in the squad were already playing that same style of formation, 4-2-3-1, 4-4-2, whatever the case. Right? Now, with regards to like best performing players under the season and everything. Now, the season was marked by collective underperformances. A few individuals stood out. Bruno Fernandes, especially, continued to be the team's most influential player. And that is one thing that fans have failed to, accept and all of that. He continued to be the team's most influential player and productive player as well, shouldering significant burden. And only him cannot do it. That's the fact. Only him cannot do it. He was the club's top scorer with 19 goals across all competitions and provided 20 assists in 57 appearances. That's 39 goal contributions in 57. 39 goal, let that sink in. 39 goal contributions in 57 appearances. In the Premier League alone, he recorded 8 goals and 11 assists in 36 matches. That is 19 goal contributions in 36 matches. That's poor, but that's a very good season in some teams. Right? Now, his consistent output led to him being recognized as the player of the season, obviously, Now, Fernandes' overwhelming statistical dominance is in a historically poor season highlights an extreme over-reliance on one player for creativity and output. Now, this indicates that there's a significant lack of supporting casts and shared responsibilities, making this team predictable and vulnerable when Fernandes is contained or absent, as evidenced in the Europa League Final, where he needed to help his teammates and it did not arrive. If you notice, there were two players that were marking Bruno in that final. Every time he tried to make a pass, they predicted where the pass was going to go and they blocked or intercepted. That way, there was no outlet. Even for Casemiro as well, there was no outlet because they knew Casemiro was good in the air, in the box, so they blocked out every ball that was crossed into the box. What about putting Maguire forward? Same thing, because they knew the team was ready. So it felt the onus was now on other players to perform. Players like Mainoo, Diallo, Rasmus Højlund, they needed to perform. Now, Diallo emerged as a key attacker, right? Tying with Fernandes on league's top scorer with 8 goals alongside 6 assists in 25 appearances. Consider that he was injured for 3 months, but still managed to get 8 goals and 6 assists this season. In a specific match against, Aston Villa, academy product Aiden Heaven, centre back, received a high rating of 7.6/10, and Casemiro, central midfielder, received a high rating of 8.3/10. The strong performance of Diallo and the positive rating of the academy products in Heaven suggests that some younger players are capable of stepping up and performing even in a challenging and unstable environment. This offers a glimmer of hope, and that's why I tagged that game, that there is hope, right? It offers a glimmer of hope and indicates a potential talent within, the squad and the academy for future rebuild. This also suggests that the club does not need to acquire in every position externally, but can also integrate, promising young talents and align it with potential long-term strategy for promoting from within. And if I were to look at like this table here, basically, you could tell Bruno Fernandes, 36 appearances, 57 in all competitions. He played over 3,000 minutes in Premier League and over 2,900 minutes in all other competitions, and was able to get 8 goals in the Premier League, 19 in all competitions, 11 goals, 11 assists in Premier League, 20 in all competitions, right? And then goals plus assists, 18 in Premier League, and then 39 in all competitions. That's crazy. Now, these are top performers for the season. These are people that probably have 1 goal or so. Now, let's take a look at line 3. Alejandro Garnacho, 36 Premier League. He played over 2,000 minutes. He had 6 goals in Premier League, 2 assists, and 8 overall in goals plus assists. What about Rasmus Højlund? 4 goals in the Premier League, played over 2,000 minutes, 32 games, 0 assists, and then overall just 4 goals, right? So in total, I think he got 10 goals this season, 6 in Europe and 4 in Premier League. Now, that is something that needs to be looked at. This needs to be looked at. Now, there are also some players that underperformed significantly in the squad. The underperformances are reported, with regards to, high value players like Rashford, Anthony, Sancho, right? These players underperformed this season, including if we're going to mention, let's not leave the goals out. I know he did well, but part of some of the underperformances, Casemiro as well, because he had a bad start to the season and then was benched several times by Rúben Amorim, and then eventually he now started to pick up later when he got the chance when Toby Collier was injured. And then also, if we're going to look at the underperformers this season, we have number 1 on the list is Marcus Rashford. Basically 15 matches played, all competitions, and he had 4 goals, 1 assist for Man United. He's on loan at Aston Villa. Same, Andre Onana, 34 games in the Premier League, right? Underperformed because performances have not improved, and obviously it indicates that new goalkeepers are needed. What about Anthony? 8 goals, no assists, reportedly on for sale. Same thing with Jadon Sancho, on loan, and obviously still underperformed at Chelsea. Kobe Mainoo, this was supposed to be a season where he will continue his stride from last season. 25 games, and then in the Premier League, no goal, no assist, right? But he scored a couple of goals in the Champions League. Same with Casemiro, right? And then Christian Eriksen, as well as Victor Lindelof, and then obviously Johnny Evans barely played, right? But these are leaving already. These players are leaving. We're talking about Johnny Evans already leaving at the end of the season. Victor Lindelof already leaving at the end of the season. Then we have Christian Eriksen already leaving at the end of the season. Casemiro is also linked with, an exit. It's assumed that he's not fitting the new tactical profile, but it is what it is. He's found a way to adjust himself. Kobe Mainoo has struggled for minutes under Rúben Amorim, but qualities are not shining through as well too, especially with the system, and that's another story for another day, right? Now, if we're going to go to what is missing in the team, what's actually missing in the team are player profiles of characters that, defining how critical the 2024-2025 season was. There were some deficiencies within the Manchester United squad, extending beyond the individual player performances to systemic, tactical, and psychological shortcomings. A significant lack of quality in the final third, and obviously on the pitch, off the pitch, was also evident, with the team often struggling to convert chances despite forcing the issue. Right, defensively and in midfield, the team displayed systemic tactical deficiencies. There were persistent positional issues in the two-man midfield, leading to an overwhelmed central area when the team was pushed into a flat back five. Now, this structural flaw meant that the central midfielders were frequently outnumbered or outmaneuvered, basically, and then confusion among the wing backs and the disjointed build-up structure, and this also contributed to defensive vulnerabilities, with players like Diogo Dalot being beaten too easily. The team frequently lost possession when attempting to play out from the back, and then goalkeeping continued to be of concern, with errors directly impacting results. Detailed breakdown of these issues points to systemic tactical deficiencies rather than just isolated player errors, suggesting that the team's struggle under pressure was fundamentally flawed, right, leading to consistent vulnerabilities. Also, injuries impacted the squad as well this season. Injuries played a significant role in exacerbating Manchester United's struggles throughout the season, 2024-2025 season, severely impacting the squad's depth and performances, particularly in defense. Long-term absences for key central defenders was also a major blow. Lisandro Martinez suffers an ACL injury, leaving him out for the season. Matthias de Ligt was faced with a knee injury and then subsequent knock, limiting his availability. This injury is also compounded by the foot injury from Lenny Yoro, created a crippling defense crisis. This forced, the deployment of makeshift partnerships and inexperienced players such as academy players like Eddie Heaven receiving a start, severely underperforming defensive stability and contributing significantly to the high number of goals conceded and overall poor results. And even Eddie Heaven we're talking about as well, basically had an injury towards the end. Towards the beginning of his career as a Manchester United player. Now, these are the things that we are talking about, and this is basically more like an overview of the major issues that faced Manchester United and all of that. Then if we're to go deeper, we're going to go longer than this, but I just want to keep it here and then probably do a part 2 as we proceed. And this was talking about the future outlooks, challenges, and strategic imperatives leading to that. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for following me with do this season reviews, 24-25 season review. And I believe that obviously that there's so many things that impacted the season that most people might not really see, and Amorim has said it time and again that these are things that people didn't see, but right now things are improving. That's what he has assured us, that things are improving. So let's be hopeful and let's believe that this improvement will come and then we can now build, from there. So let me know your thoughts and feelings about that. Is there anything I missed? I know we're going to do like a futuristic outlook and all of that, and talk about how Manchester United team can improve, and then we can build from there. So thank you so much for watching. Thanks so much for liking, sharing, and subscribing. If you haven't already, please do like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't have to miss anything as it relates to Manchester United. Thank you so much, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care, goodbye, and God bless.